Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something every organization deals with, whether they actively manage it or not: uncertainty.
Right, navigating those unknowns.
Exactly. We're going deep into the core principles, the framework of risk management, specifically as it's laid out in ISO 31000.2018.
Yeah, that's our source material today, the standard itself. And, it can look a bit dense at first glance.
It can.
But our mission here is really to cut through that complexity. We want to give you the core idea, the essentials of how to manage risk effectively. Consider this your guide.
So the goal is to equip you, our listener, with a solid grasp of how any organization, big or small, startup or established player, can really get a handle on risk.
And importantly, it's not just about dodging bullets.
No.
No, it's also about spotting those potential upsides that often hide within uncertainty. Opportunities.
Okay, let's get into it then. At its heart, what is risk, according to this standard?
Well, fundamentally, the standard defines risk as the effect of uncertainty on objectives.
Effect of uncertainty on objectives.
Okay. Yeah, it's broad, and that's on purpose. The key thing is that effect isn't always bad. It can be positive, negative, or, a mix of both.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about launching a new product. There's uncertainty, right? It could take off. Huge success, that's a positive effect.
Or it could flop. Negative effect.
Precisely. So risk management, then, is basically the coordinated activities an organization does to, direct and control itself when facing this kind of uncertainty.
So it's proactive, not just reacting when things go wrong.
Absolutely. It's fundamentally about creating and protecting value. Good risk management, it helps improve performance. It encourages innovation because you're making informed choices about taking chances.
And it supports achieving your actual goal.
Exactly. It keeps you on track.
Okay. So if an organization wants to build this capability, where do they start? I know the standard mentions some foundational principles.
It does, yeah. Figure 2 in the standard lays out 8 core principles. They're really the bedrock. First off, risk management has to be integrated.
Integrated.
Meaning it's not a separate silo or, a checklist you do once a year. It needs to be woven into all organizational activities and decisions. Part of the fabric.
Got it. Not just the risk department's problem.
Right. Everyone has a role. Second principle. It should be structured and comprehensive.
Okay.
Having a consistent, thought-through approach means your results are more reliable, more comparable over time. You can actually learn and improve.
Makes sense. What's next?
Third, and this is crucial, it needs to be customized.
So no one-size-fits-all template.
Definitely not. The framework, the processes, they have to be tailored to the organization's specific environment, its goals, its culture. What works for a bank won't be right for a tech startup or a nonprofit.
Right. Context matters.
Hugely. The fourth principle is inclusive.
Inclusive, you mean getting different people involved?
Exactly. Bringing stakeholders into the conversation.
Yeah.
That could be internal teams, sure, but also customers, suppliers, regulators, the community maybe.
Why is that so important?
Well, involving them brings diverse perspectives, different knowledge. It leads to just a richer understanding of the risks and more buy-in for whatever you decide to do. Better awareness, better decisions.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. More eyes on the problem.
Yeah. Fifth principle. Risk management has to be dynamic.
Dynamic, meaning it changes.
Constantly. The world doesn't stand still, right? New risks pop up, old ones fade, opportunities emerge. Your approach needs to be agile, able to adapt, anticipate, and respond effectively. It's definitely not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
A living process, then.
That's a good way to put it. Sixth principle. Use the best available information.
Okay, so data-driven.
To an extent, yes. Use historical data, current intel, future projections, whatever you can get. But, and this is important, it also means recognizing the limits of that information.
Acknowledging the uncertainty that remains.
Precisely. There will always be gaps, things you don't know for sure. Decisions have to be made understanding those limitations.
Humility in the face of the unknown. I like that.
Yeah. Seventh principle. Human and cultural factors.
The people side.
Absolutely huge, and often underestimated, I think. How people behave, the organization's values, communication styles, the overall culture, it all massively influences how risk is seen and managed.
You can have great processes, but if the culture isn't right.
They won't work effectively. Exactly. People need to feel safe raising concerns, for instance.
Makes sense. And the last principle.
Number 8 is continual improvement. Like pretty much any management discipline, risk management isn't static. It should get better over time through learning, feedback, and just plain experience. Always look for ways to refine it.
Okay, so those 8 principles are like the guiding philosophy, the why. how does an organization actually build this system?
Mm,
That brings us to the framework, right? Figure 3.
correct. The framework is the structure, the architecture that holds it all together. Its main job is to integrate risk management into everything important the organization does, its activities, its functions.
And leadership is key here, I imagine.
Absolutely critical. The standard really stresses this. Success hinges on integration into governance, and that needs visible leadership and commitment, right from the top management and any oversight bodies, like the board.
So if the bosses aren't bought in, it probably won't stick.
It's much, much harder. Yeah. Leadership needs to show commitment by making sure the framework is tailored properly, by putting the components in place, issuing clear policies about risk.
Allocating resources, people, money.
Yes, allocating necessary resources, assigning clear roles and responsibilities, who does what. And this also helps define the organization's overall risk appetite.
Risk appetite, how much uncertainty they're willing to live with to achieve their goals.
Exactly. So what are the main parts of building this framework?
Right, pick components.
The standard describes it as a cycle: integration, design, implementation, evaluation, and improvement.
Okay, let's unpack those. Integration first.
Integration is about really embedding risk management deep within the organization. Structure, processes, decision-making, culture. The goal is that managing risk becomes part of how everyone thinks and works.
Not just a function, but a mindset.
That's a great way to put it. Then comes design. This is where you do the groundwork.
Okay.
It involves understanding the organization's context, both external and internal. Externally, you're looking at, well, everything: social, cultural, political, legal, financial, tech trends, the economy, environment, stakeholder relationship.
Yeah, that's broad.
It has to be. And internally, you look at the organization itself: its mission, vision, values, how it's governed, its structure, culture, capabilities, people, tech, information systems, all of that.
So understanding the playing field inside and out.
Precisely. The design phase also includes formally stating the commitment, like a risk management policy, and, as we said, assigning roles, allocating resources, and setting up how you'll communicate and consult with stakeholders.
Seems like a lot of planning before you even tackle specific risks.
It's foundational. Get the design right, and the rest works better. After design comes implementation.
Putting the plan into action.
Right. Developing the specifics, making sure people understand it, ensuring it's actually used when decisions are made, integrating it into daily operations.
And how do you know if it's working, if the framework is any good?
That's evaluation. You have to periodically check. Measure the framework's performance against what you intended. Is it helping? Is it still suitable given how things might have changed?
Like a health check for your risk management system.
Yeah, exactly. And if that evaluation shows gaps or things have changed?
Then you improve.
Correct. Improvement is about adapting, responding to changes, learning from what worked or didn't, and constantly tweaking the framework and how it's integrated to make it better, more effective. It loops back, reinforcing that continual improvement principle.
Okay, so principles are the why. The framework is the what, the structure. How does the actual doing of risk management happen day to day? That must be the process itself. Figure 4.
That's right. The risk management process is the how. It's the systematic application of policies, procedures, practices. Basically, it's the steps you take.
It looks kind of linear in the diagram, but you said it's iterative.
Very much so. Think of it less like a straight line and more like a continuous cycle. You're constantly looping back and refining things as you learn more or as the situation changes.
Okay, what's the first step in this cycle?
It actually starts and continues throughout with communication and consultation.
Talking to people.
Yes, sharing information about risk, getting feedback, engaging with stakeholders all the way through the process. It ensures different views are heard, people are informed, it builds trust.
Transparency and collaboration again. What's next?
And then you establish the scope, context, and criteria.
Okay, breaking that down.
Scope is defining what you're looking at. Is it the whole organization, a specific project, a particular department? Context is revisiting that external and internal environment understanding we talked about in the framework design, but maybe more focused on the specific scope.
And criteria, what's that exactly?
Risk criteria are your benchmarks. They define how you'll evaluate the significance of a risk. What level of risk is acceptable, what's unacceptable? How do you measure likelihood and consequence? How does it align with your values and objectives? It's basically setting your tolerance levels.
Defining the rules of the game for risk.
Kind of, yeah. Once you have that set, you move into the core, risk assessment.
And risk assessment includes a few things.
Yes, it's the overall process covering 3 key activities: risk identification, risk analysis, and risk evaluation.
Okay, let's take those one by one. Identification.
Risk identification is about finding, recognizing, and describing the risks that could potentially affect your objectives within the defined scope. What could happen? What are the sources, the potential consequences? What's the likelihood? Think threats, opportunities, vulnerabilities.
Casting a wide net, looking for anything that might impact the goals, both good and bad.
Yes, both threats and potential opportunities. And consider tangible things like equipment failure, but also intangible things like damage to reputation.
Okay, once you've listed them out.
Then you do risk analysis. This is where you try to understand the nature and level of each identified risk in more detail.
How serious is it really?
Exactly. You look at the likelihood of it happening, the potential severity of the consequences if it does. You consider any existing controls you might have in place and how effective they are. This can be qualitative.
Like high, medium, low.
Right. Or it could be quantitative, using numbers and probabilities if you have enough data. The goal is a deeper understanding of each risk.
Got it. And after analyzing?
Comes risk evaluation. This is the comparison step. You take the results of your analysis and compare them against those risk criteria you set earlier.
Comparing the risk level to your tolerance level.
Precisely. This comparison helps you make decisions. Does this risk need treatment? Is it acceptable as is? Do we need to investigate it further? Maybe we even need to rethink our objectives if the risk is too significant.
So deciding what action, if any, is needed based on the analysis and our appetite for risk.
Exactly. And if the decision is that action is needed, you move to risk treatment.
Okay, fixing the problem or managing it.
Or managing it, yes. This involves selecting one or more options to modify the risk. And there are several ways to do this.
Such as?
Well, you could avoid the risk, maybe decide not to start that risky project.
Yeah.
You could take or increase the risk to pursue an opportunity-calculated gambling, essentially.
Right.
You could remove the source of the risk. You could change the likelihood of it happening or change the consequences if it does happen. You could share the risk, maybe through insurance or partnerships, or you could consciously decide to retain the risk, accept it.
Seems like a toolbox of options.
It is. And choosing the right option depends on the specific risk, the context, the cost versus benefit. And treatment itself is often iterative. You apply a treatment, then you check. Is the remaining risk acceptable now?
And treatments might create new risks.
They absolutely can. That's a key point. So you need to be aware of that and manage those new risks too.
Okay, so it's a constant cycle. Identify, analyze, evaluate, treat. What keeps it going?
Two crucial ongoing activities: monitoring and review, and recording and reporting.
Monitoring and review first.
This is about constantly checking. Are the
Yeah.
controls working? Are the treatments effective? Have new risks emerged? Is our understanding of risks still accurate? Is the whole process performing as intended? It happens both continuously and through periodic reviews.
Keeping an eye on everything and recording and reporting.
Documenting everything, what you did, what you found, the decisions you made, the outcomes. This is vital for communication, for future decision-making, for accountability, for learning, for informing stakeholders.
And you tailor the reports depending on who needs to see them.
Exactly. What the board needs to know is different from what a project team needs.
Okay, so pulling it all together. ISO 31000 gives you the principles, the framework structure, and this detailed iterative process.
That's it. It's a comprehensive guideline applicable really to any organization, any sector, any size. It provides a structured way to think about and manage uncertainty.
And I think the big takeaway, like we touched on earlier, is that this isn't just a task you complete. It's not a static manual.
No, not at all.
Effective risk management has to be integrated, dynamic, involving people, understanding context, and always improving.
Absolutely. It's about building their risk-aware culture where managing uncertainty is just, part of the normal way of doing business.
So a final thought for you listening. Consider the biggest uncertainties, the biggest risks, or maybe even opportunities facing whatever you're working on right now. How could applying some of these ideas, the principles, the framework steps, give you a clearer path to navigate them? Maybe even turn a potential threat into something positive.
That's the challenge. Something to think about.
Definitely. Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us.